man. Corey, wonderful to meet you, sir. Thank you for taking a minute out today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get in to your work as an e-commerce entrepreneur or coach, I want to know, surviving this pandemic was quite a thing, and it created ripples that we still feel to this day. How much of living through that time period and readjusting to things has affected the way that you do business and live your life now?
That's a great question. So I'd say that time period really taught me a lot about just kind of staying focused and making sure that you're creating systems and creating an ecosystem around you to support tough times like that. So obviously that was a difficult time for everybody. Being in e-commerce, that was actually a real boom for e-commerce because a lot of the retail spend shifted to e-commerce.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's uncertainties with supply chain, key employees leaving or having issues or getting sick. There's a lot of uncertainty that goes with that as well. So, if anything, it taught me to build a business that's sustainable, build it on good systems, and build it to be able to withstand the worst case scenario, which for a lot of people is exactly what COVID was.
So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids, third graders, career day, and one of the kids in the back of the room is curious and is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
So that's a great way to clarify, to kind of make sure you have your pitch down, right? Act like
Yeah,
you're explaining it to a grade school kid. But
yeah.
really, my answer to that question would be we buy products in bulk and then we resell it on Amazon. It's pretty much that simple. So obviously, I can dive into more detail and I'm sure we will, but that's it at a kindergarten level.
So what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
I don't really remember exactly. I think I was always interested in business. I mean, my dad is an entrepreneur. He's owned a State Farm insurance agency for 32 or 33 years now. And so lots of people in my family were business minded. So I think, if anything, that's kind of what I saw myself doing.
So are you from North Carolina? Is that where you're born and raised?
I am, yeah. So I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina originally.
Okay. So the foundational elements were kind of woven into your DNA, so to speak, right? For you to be in
Yep.
business. Yeah. Were there any like moments that like really steered you to think this is exactly what I want to do with my life? Or were you kind of following the family lineage? How did all that kind of transpire?
So I would say that did like that specific point in time did occur, but it didn't happen until many years later, until I was about 24, living in Chicago. It was my first full-time job out of college, and I was in sales and I was working for IBM. And so I was on the sales team. We were a really productive sales team. Most of our team was located in the Midwest. I was based out of Chicago. And so I remember I had a second line manager. So it was my manager's manager. His name was John, and somehow this guy's based in Minneapolis, but somehow he's at every single Chicago event. He's at every happy hour, he's at every meeting. And I remember one day I said to one of my team members, I was like, "How is John at like how is he always here, right? He never misses a meeting." And I will never forget the guy leaned over to me and he said, "Well, Corey, you probably see John more than his own kids do." And I remember that is really the moment in time where it kind of struck me. And I was, at the time, I was selling on Amazon as a side hustle and I was kind of taking it casually as a result. But I remember he said that to me and I was like, wow, that unfortunately could be where I am in 20, 30 years. Who knows? God forbid if I stay on this corporate path. So that's what really led me to start taking entrepreneurship more seriously and more specifically start taking my Amazon business a lot more seriously.
I've been in technology my whole life. I'm 52 and I'm in IT for a large school district by day. But
Hmm.
I've watched this. I remember buying books. I bought Red Meat off Amazon in the early days when it was just
Yeah.
a bookseller, right? And
Yeah.
I think about the transformation of Jeff Bezos. He's the ultimate metaphor. In the beginning, he had this squeaky laugh. He'd get on the Tonight Show and people would make fun of his profit sharing angle on how he made money and they were all like, "What are you doing?" And now he's this big, huge, buff, one of the richest guys on the planet. Like he just took like this online e-commerce idea and made it into the one thing that has been impenetrable all of these years. So, you know what I'm saying? Does it amaze you how that's happened?
It really does, and it's funny you talk about him going from this kind of nerdy guy to people are unsure of him to now he's buff and he's rich and all this stuff. Well, I'm sure you might have seen this meme. It's one of my favorite memes, and it's like a two-sided meme. On one side, it's like Jeff Bezos went from I sell books to I sell whatever the F I want, and on the left, it's him in this turtleneck looking super nerdy, and on the right, it's him dark shades on, walking down the street with like a tank top, just like totally jacked. And it cracks me up, but it is true, right? And it not only describes him and Amazon's rise, but e-commerce as a whole, right? And Amazon just so happens to be the largest marketplace at least in the US by far and away. In fact, a statistic I saw recently, there are 170 million US adults with an Amazon Prime subscription. That is half of the country. 50% of the country is an Amazon Prime member, and all I'm doing and all the people that I teach and the business model that we practice is doing is we're just tapping into that existing demand.
Yep. Yep. So that's the thing about what you're doing. What is talk to me about the strength of what you're doing. Kind of get into the etymology of how you decided that you were going to get things in bulk and resale, and how this business model has been so bulletproof for you.
Yeah, so again, but the point that I just mentioned, talking about tapping into existing demand, that is the beauty of this business model, and that's what makes it so practical, is we're not spending a dime on marketing. All we're doing is we're looking at finding products that people are already buying and going out and sourcing those for a price that allows us to sell them for a profit on Amazon. So at its core, that's all we're doing. And as long as there's a demand for brand name products on Amazon, which I think most people would agree is going to be the case for at least the next 50 years, if not longer, assuming Amazon doesn't just collapse one day,
Yeah.
then this business model is always going to be viable. And the beauty of it too is, well, yes, we practice it on Amazon because that's where it's the most lucrative and that's where the most buyers are. You could do the same thing on any other marketplace. That's what brick and mortar retailers do, right? They're just buying in bulk and selling, but instead of on Amazon, they're selling in the store.
So on this timeline of being in e-commerce, what's one of the biggest risks that you took in getting a product and it turned into something that was totally different from what you expected?
Yeah, so there was one time, this was actually back during COVID, kind of on the tail end of COVID. There was a product that we had been selling for probably a year at that point, where we were buying it for about $148. We were selling it at about $200, and we had been selling it at that price for the whole last year. It was basically guaranteed profit as far as we were concerned. And so one day the manufacturer calls us and they say, "Hey, we've got a ton of this product available. Do you want to take all of it?" And I said, yes, absolutely. And it was about, I think it was about 75 or $80,000 worth of, it was two products. One was a two-way marine radio in black, and the other was the same radio in navy. So we bought the products, we start selling them, and all of a sudden this guy comes out of nowhere, dropping the price to originally 195, then 190, then 180. Next thing we knew, we were losing 5, 6, $7 per unit on every sale, but we had to sell through to get some capital back and move on to the next product. So that's kind of a long-winded way of saying sometimes you make investments, you buy inventory that you think is going to be profitable. It ends up not being profitable, and that's probably the biggest instance of that happening. All in all, we lost, I think, $6,000 to $8,000. So again, we spent about 75K on the inventory, and once we sold it, we were left with, 67, 68K, something like that.
You know, one of the things that's an incarnation of this e-commerce world is we have these shops in Kansas City called Retail Rebel, and it's
hmm
all of the stuff that gets sent back to Amazon. And then they just take it and put it in bins. And it's created this kind of dystopian world where all these people wait in massive lines to get one of the TVs or to get one of the marine radios or whatever at like a dollar or two. What a weird reality. I mean, how does that work? How do you and others that are out there trying to make money not lose money because these places exist? How does that work?
So, I mean, what you're basically describing is a company that's buying, sounds like they're buying Amazon returns in bulk, and then they're
Yeah.
just offering them out there to people that come in store for, pennies on the dollar. And I actually know people that run services like this, returns processing service. So for example, they'll partner with an Amazon seller like myself, and somebody might say, "Hey, Corey, all of your returns, we'll just buy them off you for, X amount, right? Which is again probably going to be pennies on the dollar." And then they turn around and put them in lots and then sell them to people who would just want to get a really good product at a fraction of the price because it's an Amazon return and it's not brand new. So that's an entire business model in and of itself, and it's just a way for people like myself to monetize our returns,
Yeah.
and also a way for the everyday consumer to get potentially really cool, really expensive products at a fraction of the price.
Yeah, I've been surprised. I've actually gone into them and there's been some really cool things. I know people personally that make that a part of their lives and feed off of that business model. They'll buy
Yeah,
things and so it's just this
exactly. And
fish.
you can buy from those discount stores and then turn around and sell
Yeah.
them on Amazon as used, or you can sell them on eBay, or you can sell them on Facebook Marketplace. And I know people that do that too. Like the bottom line is, I think, which is I think is kind of what you're getting at, is that this Amazon ecosystem has created a bunch of other tangential businesses next to it, under it, above it, aside, right? Like on all different angles.
And what I'm thinking is when I think about a mind like Jeff Bezos, he seems like he's a chess master. He saw this. He's orchestrated this super organism that rains down on all of us, correct? I mean,
Right.
do you feel like he has that level of acumen that he has kind of forecasted and watched this and mitigated this for to be our reality?
I think a lot of this was his plan, absolutely. I mean, they opened the online Amazon.com marketplace up to third-party sellers, and I think it was the year 2000, and they actually lost money on the FBA program, which is what enables sellers like me to sell on the platform at scale. They lost money on that program for the first 10 years. So when you say like, did you think he planned this? Do you think this was all part of a master chess game? 100%. You don't make investments that lose money for 10 years without, doing a little planning ahead. And by the way, that investment that lost money for 10 years now accounts for billions in annual, not revenue, but profit for them. So it,
Wow.
it certainly paid off. And I think he knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah, for sure. So let me ask you this. Who has been that hero, that bedrock for you in your career that you've looked up to?
So that's a good question. I mean, there's a bunch of entrepreneurs that I've always looked up to, but I'd say again, just to go back to my dad as an example, because he's had the same business for what did I say, 32 or 33 years. And I think entrepreneurship's a space where a lot of people they get into it and then they give up after a while. So anyone that's been I guess in the game for that long is someone I look up to and respect.
So we've talked about Jeff quite a bit, but if there is there somebody else out there that exists in the e-commerce sphere that you would love to meet, hang out with, see how they work, spend a day with them on the job? Is there anybody or an entrepreneur that you would love to meet?
Yeah, so in the e-commerce space, someone I would like to meet is the CEO of a company called Pattern. So Pattern is the number one third-party seller on Amazon.com at the moment, and they have a very similar business model to mine in the sense that they are a reseller. They partner directly with brands to add value to those brands through marketing on Amazon, and then basically in return, they get the authorization to sell that brand's products, and they make money on the sale of each product. So I'd like to meet the CEO of that company because that's a multi-billion dollar Amazon seller, for lack of a better term, with a very similar business model. So they're just doing what I'm doing at the highest possible scale.
I'm curious with eBay. eBay used to be one of those things where you'd put your bids in, wait around. I remember back in the day, like 10 years
Yeah.
ago, I would come back and it just seems like an antiquated, archaic way of doing things. But now you can buy it off of them. How are those guys competing in this Amazon world? How's eBay making it? How have they succumbed to this new world of e-commerce?
So an analogy that someone said to me recently that I think perfectly sums it up is they're just different platforms. And the analogy that I'll use is the goal when selling on Amazon is you want to sell one thing 100 times. The reason you sell something on eBay is if you're selling 100 things one time, right?
Uh-huh.
So Amazon is a volume platform. You're talking your everyday products that people are buying. They're going to go buy it on Amazon. eBay is for the more niche, more collectors, more one-off purchase, right? And I'll give you another example. I bought a Ninja Creamy, which is an appliance, and I bought it off Amazon,
Okay.
right? This basically it'll turn anything into ice cream is essentially what it does, and it's great, and I love it. But recently, the cup that goes into the creamy broke, right? It completely broke off. So I have two options. One, I can just buy a brand new unit off Amazon, which is gonna be like $200. But what I'm doing instead is I'm going on eBay and buying just the cup
Yep.
for $20, and then that way it's back to normal, right? So eBay is, at least personally, what I use to buy like replacement parts or one-off things, and a lot of people, buy and sell collectibles, think trading cards,
Yep.
rare video games. Like there's a lot of business that goes on eBay that a lot of people just don't think about.
Yeah, that's true. My son's really into jerseys and I'll look on there
Hmm.
and it's a fraction of what it would be. But it's just people that I don't know where they're getting them, but they're selling them at a cheaper cost, you know.
In fact, I was talking to somebody on Twitter about this today. I think eBay is so slept on. I still think it's an incredible platform, especially for selling used products,
Yep.
right? You talked earlier about the store in your town that they're selling basically the Amazon returns at pennies on the dollar. A smart person would buy the certain returns that are selling well on eBay and then just flip them on eBay,
Yeah.
right? Because eBay is way more generous with letting you sell used products, and Amazon can be a little picky about what you can and can't sell from time to time. So I think eBay is fantastic.
Absolutely. I totally agree. So let me ask you this. What is the driving force for you to wake up every day and to do this work that you do? To be at the top of your game, to evolve as a human being? What is that gas in your tank every day?
So I'll give you two answers. One is from the view of the actual Amazon business itself, right, where I'm buying products, essentially running a retail business. And then the second answer will be more so why am I teaching people and why am I building a community around this? So the first reason would be for lack of a better term, like I just love the game. I really enjoy buying $50,000 worth of Gillette razors and selling them for $62,000, right? Like that's the kind of just flipping has always intrigued me. It's always been interesting to me. And it's something that I've done at larger and larger scale over the years. In college, I started by buying Xboxes off of Marketplace and flipping them on eBay, right? $200, $300 transaction. Now scaling up to sometimes we're buying hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of products at a time, and it's just that process is kind of what keeps me going on that side. Now, second answer, what kind of fires me up, what gets me up in the morning to teach people this stuff and help people scale their businesses too. It's because this is the exact type, I guess the help and the content that I'm making and everything I'm doing on that side is exactly what I needed that I didn't have when I started 7 years ago. If me with my content and what I'm teaching existed back then when I started, I would be 100 times further ahead in my journey than I am now. And so, again, that's why I'm building a community around this to help people who are where I was get to where I am now much quicker than it took me because it's fun. And honestly, I think there's unlimited opportunity out there. I just have a big time abundance mentality. So if I teach somebody and if I help somebody scale from, 5K a month in sales to 100K a month in sales, which I've done hundreds of times, that in no way, shape, or form detracts from my ability to sell more on Amazon. If anything, it helps me. If anything, I help and teach other people selfishly because a lot of times these same people that I help bring me opportunities or they, cut me in on deals and it all comes back around. So that's kind of my answer for the second part.
So your job is basically being a legal adrenaline junkie because you have to just get rushed with that adrenaline every time this happens.
Yeah, yeah, it is fun. Well, on both sides, right? Placing a
Yep.
very large order for products is adrenaline inducing for sure. And also seeing, like, helping somebody through an issue or solving a problem for somebody that's like, oh, I know the answer to that easily, even though they couldn't see it. That's an adrenaline shot too, but it just feels good being able to give a confident answer to somebody who can apply it right away.
There's a part of it too where it's almost like a gamble. Like when people go out and they have gambling problems, there's a chance they could totally lose everything. There's a gamble that you go through, but even like you said on that one with the radios, if you lose the next shipment, you could gain enough to overshadow that. Is that kind of the Matrix, the kind of Tetris game you're playing?
Yeah, that's very well said. And I actually was having this conversation with somebody inside our community recently. I was like, once you've been doing this for a while and you're good at forecasting and reading trends and knowing about certain products and niches, your success rate is going to be 80 to 85%, right? 80 to 85% of the products you buy, you should make money on.
Yeah.
Now, there's always unforeseen things that can happen, which is why I leave that 10 to 15 to 20% margin of error. Something's going to happen and you're going to lose money. But when you give anybody 80% odds and they're going to come out ahead 99 times out of 100. So that's kind of the way you got to look at it.
So where do you see yourself in, say, 10 years from now? We got AI, we got all these technological developments. We don't know what's really going to happen, but in this world of e-commerce, what is your ultimate vision for, say, 10 years from now?
Yeah, good question. So, I mean, that's a pretty far ways down the road to think, but in my mind, the main thing is I'm doing right now is that I'm building this Amazon business and I'm building a community of Amazon sellers as well. So 10 years from now, I mean, who knows if I'm still in the e-commerce space or not, but I would definitely want to be building a cash flow business like the Amazon business I have now, and I definitely want to be building a community of like-minded people. So those two things will never change. Industry itself may or may not change, but I mean, the way that selling on Amazon is going, I don't see any reason why I would not be doing that to at least some extent 10 years from now, because the knowledge and the contacts and the capital, all that compounds over time. So I guess 10 years from now would be year 17 for me. That's going to be a lot better than, year 7 where we are now.
Yeah. There's been a lot of fear about AI and what it can do, and I think about with what you're doing. You really have to have people orchestrating this. This isn't something that can just be automated, correct?
So, correct. I mean, you've got to there's a lot of moving parts and somebody's got to be moving a lot of those parts. Now, sure, AI can do some of that, but a lot of this is very nuanced and at this point in time, requires a human to do it.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Of all of the things in the arc of your career up to this point that you've done, what are you the proudest of?
So I would say this is a good question. I feel you asked really good questions. I haven't been asked a lot of these before. So proudest of, I would say my team. So I have two employees, both in the Philippines, and so for folks that don't know, right, it's I guess, a very popular thing to do in e-commerce is to outsource a lot of the labor to the Philippines because the dollar is just much stronger over there than it is here in the US. So common wage for employees in the Philippines is, let's say, $3 to $5 per hour. Now that's definitely on the low end, but you got to think that that's good money for folks over there. My two employees are both making, I guess if you were to extrapolate the bonuses plus their hourly pay, everything that they're making, they're probably in the $15 to $20 per hour range,
Yeah.
which for the Philippines is very, very good money. I don't know what percentile it puts them in, but bottom line, one of my employees said to me, she's like, I went from saying to myself every day, how are we going to put food on the table, to now I say, what kind of food do we put on the table? She can virtually buy anything she wants. In fact, she just bought her second house and a car when vast majority of people in the Philippines own neither of those things.
Yeah.
So, if I had to say what am I proudest of, I think it's helping them really pull them out of poverty and better their lives. And the one in particular that I mentioned that bought the two houses and the car turned her into a leader, right? She went from order taker, kind of timid 5 years ago when she started working for me. Now she knows how to lead. She can delegate. She's good. Just I've seen her completely transform as a person and worker as well.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I'd say disciplined and very, I'd say focused on goal achievement. And I mean, really, that is kind of what it comes down to, right? I mean, I think a lot of my time is spent, thinking about the goals that I have set for myself and how to achieve those. So, probably need to relax a little more than I currently do. But, I'd say that's how I perceive myself right now. And I think it's a good thing too, right? Because how else do you get anything done if you're not focused on it?
Yeah, for sure. Corey, if anyone wants to reach out, hire you, learn more about what you're doing, any of the good business, where do they go?
Yeah, so I'd say best place to go would be, and this is a 100% free guide for anybody that wants to get started in the business that I mentioned, right? Amazon wholesale. They can just go to freewholesaleguide.com, completely free for your audience members there. And if people want to connect with me personally, I would head over to YouTube, where I'm just Corey Ganim on YouTube.
Right on. Corey, this has been wonderful. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time. Have a wonderful 2025, man.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Appreciate it.